I would like to acknowledge that we are on unceded Gitxsan territory. The Misty Rivers Arts Council is pleased to be developing a relationship with the House of Nicodane, whose territory our art center is on, and we look forward to that relationship growing in the future. Misty Rivers Arts Council is a small arts organization on Gitxsan territory, supporting local artists and bringing art to the communities in the Upper Skeena region. We've recently opened an art center in Hazelton, and although we can't currently show art in the gallery, we're really excited to be able to bring art shows into an online format, as well as provide panels like this one. We really hope that this one turns into more than one, and then we get to do this more often. Leading the panel discussion today is John Dowdle. John, maybe just give a little wave there so everyone knows who you are. Thank you. John is our local arts coordinator for Misty Rivers, and he's also an artist who was born in Winnipeg. After being immersed in musical theater as a teenager, he moved out west and transitioned into visual and performance art. He uses found materials and physical activity to create performance pieces and assemblage. He's excited about supporting artists in the Upper Skeena region by making art accessible and fun. I'm Cynthia McCreary. I'm the arts administrator for Misty Rivers. I was born and raised on Gitxsan territory, which is also where I raised my son. I just returned to Hazelton after working for the art program at YVR for 5 years and completing my training as an expressive arts therapist. Needless to say, I'm extremely excited to be home, especially in a time like this. It's just, it's a nice place to be. So what I'll do now is introduce the artists. I'm going to introduce Teresa and Leah, and then I'm going to pass it over to John, who will introduce Doug because he knows him. And then John will go ahead and lead us into the discussion. So Teresa is a proud member of, sorry, I'm just looking through my notes here, is a proud member of the White River First Nation, Beaver Creek, Yukon, and Alaska. And I think I didn't say her full name, so it's Teresa Vander Meer-Chassé. Teresa is an independent curator, consultant, and visual artist. Her beadwork is inspired by the strong women in her life, her mother, aunts, and grandmothers, and the support of the caring men in her life, her father, uncles, cousins, and grandfathers. Teresa is mostly a self-taught artist. However, her grandmother, Marilyn John, an Upper Tanana elder in residential schools, encouraged her to bead and sew. You can find out more about Teresa at www.teresavandermeerchassé.wordpress.com. And I'll put these links in the chat as well. Teresa's joining us today from Victoria.
For the Pro Art Alliance of Greater Victoria, as well as a guest curator at Open Space Art Society and the board chair of the Ministry of Casual Living. Jarvis received an MFA in studio art from the University of Guelph, Ontario, and is currently a sessional instructor in the UVic Visual Arts Department. Visit www.dougjarvis.ca for a portfolio of his work. And again, that'll be posted in the chat there.
Okay, and Leah Pipe has lived in the coastal mountain ranges of northern BC for 20 years in a small town called Hazelton. Her community is located in the heart of Gitxsan territory with an incredible river running through it, the Skeena River. She works as a professional artist, graphic designer, and she's the 4th generation of Pipes to live in Hazelton. Leah has the heart of a raven, creative, curious, and drawn to beauty. Her work is both simple and detailed, capturing natural elements and portraying them in a striking yet minimalistic layout. She aims to force her viewers to truly examine the micro-amazing details of a feather, a raven's beak, snow-capped mountains, salmon tails, and the shapes of wolves' ears. In the small details found in nature that inspire Pipe to share her art with others. Find out more about Leah at www.leahpipeartist.com. And Leah is joining us from New Hazelton.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. John, I'll pass it over to you for the discussion. Thanks everyone for being here.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Why don't we start with Leah? So I guess we've read your bios here, but why can't I just ask you to describe your background and art activities in your own words?
You're asking me, John?
Yes, Leah, yeah.
My background, I'm self-taught. I was a young person attempted to apply to large art institutions and schools and was rejected and told I was unteachable, which really impacted me at the time. But I do high realism, photorealism, and so at that time, they felt I was too narrowed into that. And 30 years later, I'm still doing photorealistic work, so I guess they're kind of right. Yeah, so I'm currently focusing on works on canvas, but I have worked on paper as well, and exploring some new techniques. And I sell my work locally. I have great support from the community, which has been really amazing. And recently have my work in Inuit Gallery in Gastown, and through the YVR program that Cynthia was working at. It was just an amazing opportunity. So it's kind of exciting times right now to be an artist.
And also, what have you been up to for the last couple months? And have you had to shift your plans much due to COVID-19?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that shifted. First of all, I want to share that a week before the pandemic happened, I had a car accident, which greatly affected my neck and shoulder with whiplash. And then the pandemic happened, which being, artists are self-isolators, the impulse inside my artist heart was, yes, I can do all the art that I want without any interruption. The whole world is in shutdown. There's this kind of creative free range now, and I couldn't produce because of my injuries. I still painted, but I was in a lot of pain. So I was really frustrated those first few weeks where I just wanted to unleash and just huge production because regular life had shut down and was put on pause. But so I'm still painting over the last couple months. I've still been producing, but I've had more time to reflect and study other artists and do these things I haven't had time for before. And lo and behold, believe it or not, I don't know if I want to say this claim publicly, but I'm starting to loosen up my tight photorealistic details and wanting to do this. And I didn't have that opportunity before because I was, regular life just kind of eats up all your time. This has given me the chance to stop and really get positioned to change my work.
Great. Now, why don't we move to Teresa? Can you tell us, in your own words, a bit about your art background and what you've been up to, and also what you've been up to in the last couple months? And have you had to shift plans? I noticed you had a show at 50/50 recently. And it was online.
For sure. So, Dine K Dalchet Elna Shansi, Nagle K Teresa Vander Meer-Chassé Shansi. My Abertana name is Dalchet Elna, and my English name is Teresa Vander Meer-Chassé. So I'm currently residing in Victoria, BC. However, I travel home to the Yukon all the time. I'm actually heading there on Sunday. So it's a busy time. For myself, my art is mostly about beadwork. I focus on beadwork, but I focus on beadwork in a different way. I don't make moccasins. I don't make traditional crafts. I do very contemporary beadwork, drawing upon kind of these traditional teachings that I had growing up. So the work that I've kind of been doing this last year, throughout this last year, is fashion. I haven't explored fashion ever, and I think it was earlier this year, January, February, I had a residency at the Bonnie Macomb Cray residency here in Victoria, and a 50/50 solo exhibition would be happening in April. And like everybody here, we all experienced the pandemic. So the 50/50 had to shut down, but they graciously let me display my work and take photos of it, and I was able to video it. So I was able to kind of still walk away with an exhibition, even though people weren't able to see it in real. So that's actually one of the pieces from that show. Other than that, yes, my life has changed very much because of this. I lost 2 grandparents last month. So I'm still kind of dealing with grief and trying to figure out how to be creative during that time. But it's very hard. So, it just it takes time to get over those kind of things, and art has always been able to calm me. So I'm really happy to still be doing and producing work. Yeah.
Great, thanks. And Doug, same question. Can you tell us in your own words about your art practice and what kind of shifts you've had to make in the last couple months?
Yeah, certainly. And thank you for inviting me to this panel. I'm really happy to be able to think about my work and to share it with all of you and to virtually visit Misty Rivers. I'd like to get up there sometime when it's possible, and hope John and family, you're all doing well. We miss you here in Victoria. But yes, it's an interesting time. My work, as my bio kind of suggests, I'm part of a lot of different collectives, or I'd like to work collectively, and I have my own independent practices, which is what I've been working on more recently. But through the work with avatars and working in Second Life and kind of networked environment projects, you know, that a lot of that stuff was happening in 2006 to 2009, with things kind of trickling afterwards. But it really did set up my interest in kind of virtual entities, virtual environments, how we interface with technology, and you know, different art projects, kind of the history of internet art. And so that's kind of one area of interest. And then working with Nauseous Sector, which is another collective with Jackson Two Bears and Ted Hebert. For many years, we were extensively exploring kind of the paranormal and absurdity, and doing different interventions and a lot of performance works and sculptures, installations, working with a lot of video and different technologies, 3D printing and different things. We've got a good website, nauseoussector.net, that kind of covers a lot of our projects. But through that, we were also working with some brainwave sensors. And as my practice kind of intersects with, you know, my own work or with different collectives, the project we were doing with Nauseous Sector and the brainwave sensors kind of led me to explore a bit further, and this was a little while ago, of looking at maybe applying the brainwave sensors to my belly brain. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of kind of the gut instinct and the idea that we have a second brain that is composed of our neurons in our digestive system. So for a while now, I've kind of been researching the idea of the belly brain and how to inhabit that idea, how to build a relationship with it. You know, a lot of it's mediated through technology. So yeah, I did a few different projects with that, but it kind of explains my, you know, the history of working with the paranormal and ghosts and avatars. I really do kind of focus on how can I build a relationship with this non-material entity, or a belly brain. And so I've done a series of different live actions and installations exploring relationship with my belly brain. And more recently, I've been, you know, it's one thing for me to talk about the belly brain and, you know, do different actions that are relating to mine, but part of the challenge of this kind of concept-based work and performance is, how do I get other people involved, and how can I share this with you? So more recently, I've been looking at a story from World War I, where volunteers made donuts for soldiers in the front lines in northern France. And I was interested in that because of the whole kind of phenomena of the smell, and that kind of transporting the soldiers to another time and place, and that kind of that kind of phenomena. And I thought this, you know, asking the questions, is there some relationship to the belly brain, or how might the belly brain have been present in those soldiers, or how would that action of care and in that kind of extreme context, you know, what could it activate? So I've been looking at that story and doing a lot of research into the First World War and the donuts. And so recently, back in January, I was invited to the School of Creative Arts and the Incubator Lab, kind of a collaboration at the University of Windsor. And so I went there for a short research residency and spent some time in the gallery and gave an artist talk and did some workshops at the Incubator Lab. And so kind of exploring the idea of making the donuts and testing, you know, my saliva for before and after eating the donuts, and kind of just exploring the kind of that landscape of potentials of how, you know, another kind of system within my consciousness might be activated by those processes. So I was doing that, and then some of the work that I made or continued to work with at that residency. I was invited to participate in the UVic Art Education Faculty Exhibition that was taking place in March. And so it unfortunately closed, kind of opened and closed right in the middle of March when all the COVID stuff was starting to happen. But there I presented a series. I've been making sandbag donuts. I'm kind of amalgamating or conflating the donut story with sandbags, and I've been making, these are mini ones, but I've been making larger ones kind of the size of a helmet, and created a stack of them that I presented at the as part of the art ed exhibitions. And the series is called the Donut Eaters. So the Donut Eaters is the kind of the larger project that I'm working with. So it involves lots of drawing and performance, doing the workshops, making donuts, really exploring kind of all of the materials, how that comes together. And then I'm working on a video animation of this kind of process. I've got all these different ideas and things and ways of connecting these thoughts in my head, and I need to get them into a form that I can share more with people. So that's kind of what I've been working on. Immediately, because of the situation, I guess with my other jobs and advocacy, and I also work at Open Space with curating, I've just been, I got to move into my studio in the back. I built a small studio in the backyard, and so I'm just in here all the time now. So I'm quite happy. Similar to you, Leah, it's kind of a nice dedicated time to be in my studio, doing all of my different jobs. But in my mind, I've also just inhabited the studio, and I'm never going to leave. I've kind of decided that I will forever now be conceptually and psychologically in my studio space in whatever work I can do. So I kind of thank this opportunity of the global event to kind of help me focus, and kind of spend that time. So yeah, I'm kind of turning it into, it's kind of like a residency. That's how I've been treating it. So yes, I'm happy to be able to share what I'm working with and hear what you are also up to. So thank you.
Thanks, Doug. I want a donut now, but I'll have to get one later. So Teresa, do you think art can help us get closer to the truth regarding the virus? Like, is art more than entertainment during this time? Or even in general, how is art more than just aesthetic entertainment?
Yeah. The biggest thing that I've been having trouble with as of late is there's so many calls, especially for Indigenous artists and beadwork in particular, for the COVID, like for the mask to be beaded, quilled, everything like that. People are making masks out of cedar and stuff like that. And it's interesting, but it's not something I feel like I can participate in because I've experienced grief recently, and it's something that I'm just not able to fully engage. My mind right now is very cloudy, and even trying to conceptually understand what is happening to the world around me. My world feels so small. I've lost 2 people recently, and that's all I can think about. That's what my focus is on. I really don't see the rest of the world happening right now. It's not existent for me. So for myself, I just keep thinking about what makes me happy, me personally, not anyone else. And that's what I've been doing. I've been making these little, I don't know if you can see it, they're like little houses. My grandpa Sid has built a museum in his backyard, and he has all these little false fronts and stuff like that. And I've just been whipping off a bunch of these little keychains and donating, giving grandpa half the proceeds and half to me. And that's what I like. I realize that this is actually what I really enjoy. I made this piece for my grandma. So I'm going to be giving it to her, hopefully, like when I'm done my quarantine in the Yukon, this next coming trip. But it's that, and I think that's what art is for me now. Is it's for me. It's not for anyone else, and I don't want to fit an expectation for anyone else. And so, kind of going back to your question of, can art explore the truth of COVID? Well, it's helping me explore a different side of me, which is focusing on me, my own mental health, and my family. It's the only thing that I want to focus on right now, especially when we're so apart. I couldn't attend any of the funerals. There weren't any funerals to attend, and those things are really important when you're grieving for an individual. So understanding how to live with that, but not being able to hold the ones that you love is very difficult. And it really starts to question how we connect. And how we connect as people is very much the physical aspect. And same with art, right? We like going into a gallery. I like going into a gallery space and taking in everything, because you can walk around the piece. You can, maybe there's a smell to the, moose hide that was just recently home tanned. And, you get those sensations that you're able to experience in the physical world. But now we're having to do it virtually and digitally. And it's a slow process to actually translate how art can impact an individual. And so for myself, I'm just indulging myself in all of this work that I'm creating, but nobody gets to see it except you're seeing it online. But I get to wear it. I can put it on me. I can walk around in it. It's something that I am able to still experience. So I don't know. It's not really an answer to your question, but it's an attempt to explain kind of the situation that I'm dealing with of grieving and being away from family, but still trying to be creative because that is who I am. That's what I like to do. I like to be busy. My hands need to be busy. And yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really valuable. Thanks. And Leah, what do you think? Can art help us get closer to the truth of the virus? And how is art more than entertainment in this time?
First, I want to say, Teresa, I'm really sorry for your loss, and thankfully, art has such a healing component to it. I know from personal experience, it's really gotten me through some really tough places. So I really wish you the best, and I super empathize with your loss. And it really leads into how I'd like to answer that question. I was reading about the role artists play in historic catastrophes and war in times of injustice and epidemics, and reading specifically about the AIDS epidemic and how artists really rise up to connect us all on a multitude of issues. So I've been witnessing through my own social media avenues that this is such an interesting time to see creativity coming forward, even from non-creatives, people that would self-proclaim that they're not creative at all, from digital art, means of connecting differently, even TikTok, people are dancing, like it's just gardening, sourdough challenges, like people are connecting, making things and doing things and sharing things so radically different than ever before. I mean, this is unprecedented. But artists have always played that role of bringing issues to the forefront or explaining our pain and loss. And I think in the coming months, we're going to see some profound changes and some new images that are going to speak to what everyone has been going through around the globe. And hearing from people that follow my work, it's been so fascinating to me to hear them say that, rather than a distraction, focusing on something that makes their heart feel better or provokes them to think differently or to feel something in this time has been so profoundly important to them. And I've never felt more valuable as an artist in society than this time. It's been super cool, where, I've felt that art is valuable, and of course it is, and we all know that intellectually, but I've been feeling it differently, that we are, and in the words of our own Prime Minister, he said artists are the ones that are helping us get through this day and cheering our days and healing us and connecting us. He said that weeks ago in one of his addresses. And I thought, wow, that's cool. We're being acknowledged that we have a role to play, And so I'm really fascinated by that.
And Doug, what do you think? Does this art help us get closer to the truth of COVID? And is it more than a distraction?
I'm going to say yes to all. I've got a couple of different perspectives. I do work in advocacy, and advocacy is very busy right now. And Leah, as you're saying, we're fortunate to live in a country that does support the arts, and from the federal level, the Prime Minister, indicating the important role that arts and culture is playing at this time, and how people are engaging with it. And from an advocacy perspective, we're kind of trying to make sure that governments realize that, and support how the arts need to function, and kind of some of the challenges that they're having. Live performance is really taking a hit right now, but at the same time, just keeping it visible, what art is providing for society at a time like this. So there's, that's interesting, and it's bringing up all kinds of questions around, how art and artists are contributors to our, general culture. So that's good. So there's some initiatives coming through. So taking advantage of the kind of pandemic situation to look at living wage and other kind of initiatives like that. But then there's also, the presentation aspect, and a lot of stuff moving online, and which is great. There's people have been working in online kind of virtual environments for many years, right? So it's not a new idea. There's certainly a rush of things that are going there and going up online, and so it's a little bit of burnout, and there's even terms now like Zoom fatigue, which is pretty interesting. But it's still also making things like this available and accessible, and people coming together once you get used to little talking heads of spending time, and it's really addressing certain accessibility issues, which hopefully will carry over. So there's some good work that's being done, as long as we can kind of integrate it back into kind of the real world that we live in. I think it's, this kind of pause is showing the importance of our physical and social kind of relationships. It's really making me aware of that. Like I said, I'm quite happy, as many artists are, to be having more time in the studio and to kind of hunker down. But I'm also noticing, that I do a lot of work in socializing and in the arts, a lot of just going to openings or other events or running into people, coffee, a lot of work gets done, a lot of indirect work. And I'm not really missing that, like just seeing people and learning things and experiencing things through others' experiences, which I feel is kind of cut off in this medium. So whether or not that kind of gives us more truth about, the virus specifically, I think we're certainly getting to learn a lot more. I think the role that artists and art plays in our society is that we can handle kind of uncomfortable or challenging information or situations, or show things, without choosing a side, but presenting, possibilities and different perspectives. So I think it's just showing that art is still super relevant and important from lots of different angles. And so I think that's what people are starting to, or are better appreciating. So that's good. And then I'm kind of fascinated by the social distancing, the physical distancing, all of these different processes that will translate and develop out into the public spaces. But it's also, making us more aware on a biological kind of level. So yes, with working with the belly brain and things like that, that anything, a lot of the talk of the virus, there's so much more information now, out there about viruses, and just, contact tracing, what we're touching, and all the, all the displays of, our exhaust, all the things that are just going, wow, like seeing on that micro level. So I'm far more aware of that kind of surface. I was a little bit before, talking about the gut biome and yeah, that level of, I'm sorry, losing the words, but that kind of microscopic level. So I'm kind of quite interested in that it's making us aware of how, how our interactions function. Now, there's also the side that with all of the disinfecting you know, it's making us aware of, okay, how do we keep safe like that? But also, how do we make sure we don't kill everything around us, all this important kind of patina of the surface of the world that we do need and that we do interact with, because our bodies are, you know, made up predominantly of other organisms. So that kind of interface, it's really making me aware of that. And yeah, it's an opportunity to talk about it on a more broader scale. So I think it's, you know, the situation is certainly giving us lots to work with. And yeah, as artists, some things to kind of really, you know, do research on and mine down into.
Teresa, has it been more of a struggle to balance online and offline life during COVID-19, or has it been the same, or have you had more offline time or online time?
Yeah, it is a difficult balance. I recently curated an exhibition at the Yukon Art Center in Whitehorse called Emerging North, and we were just about to open, and we weren't able to have our opening reception because the gallery had to shut down for the pandemic. Just recently, they were able to kind of start to schedule people, like families, individuals, to actually go into the gallery by themselves to visit it. So that's a really interesting initiative of how a gallery is attempting to make light of the situation and get people in the door. And right before we knew that we were going to shut everything down, we did a video and recorded me doing a curator's tour of the exhibition. So immediately that gallery knew that they had to go online, that this was a really big exhibition. It was filled full of young Indigenous emerging artists. It was their first big exhibition anywhere, especially in the Yukon. The Yukon Art Center is the biggest gallery space that you could be presented in. And because we lost the ability to have the opening reception, we knew we had to go online really fast. And as soon as that happened, I felt like working with the 50/50 collective to get my work online as well. There was a lot of focus of how do I get as many photos that I can, or let's do a video, or we had to think about presenting art in a different way. Especially as a curator, I dedicated so much time setting up that Emerging North exhibition. Like, it's all, you know, for you to walk through. The first thing you see is supposed to be this, then you're supposed to turn the corner and you're able to see more, you know, like that's what a curator does, is have the ability of guiding your audience and show them exactly what you want them to see. And sadly, not many people are able to experience that right now. So curating for an online audience is very different and very struggling. And I find I'm at the computer as soon as I wake up until I go to bed. I don't have much of an offline life. Occasionally leave for some food or groceries and then come back really fast because my entire existence is now online. I have to, how do I reach this audience? How do I connect with this person? Because I naturally go back and forth between Yukon and British Columbia, I want to make sure that I have those connections still. How do I maintain them? Like Doug said, I'm missing out on all my coffees. That's the time where I like to meet other artists and curators and just sit down, talk about everything, and then we all of a sudden have a new exhibition idea or new project that we can spin. So that part is lacking, and it's not translating well to the online world. So my hope is, you know, eventually we'll start to get into a little bit more of a familiar pace. I don't know when that will happen, but I'm looking forward to it. So yes, my balancing of the online, offline world is very difficult.
And Leah, how about you? Have you had more of a struggle balancing your online and offline life during the last couple months?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. You know, shortly after the pandemic broke out, I was consumed. I was just on my phone constantly, and you know, it was so interesting. I wasn't getting any artwork done. I wasn't getting anything done. For the first 3 weeks, it seemed like you know, I was on my phone for hours, and either I was checking stats or information, and you know, there's this panic and fear, and trying to grapple with what is happening and what are the implications to this. And it was also escapism too. Like I'd find I would like watch, you know, comedies for like 7 hours, you know, and I was saying, Leah, you have to get into a routine. You can't be doing this. You got to get into production. Like you're completely abandoning the rest of your life. And also seeing all these artistic opportunities, because like Teresa said, everything was, you know, starting to, or sorry, Doug was saying everything's kind of a mad rush onto the internet now. And I was seeing so many cool opportunities and collectives and stuff I hadn't seen before. And I questioned whether they were always there, and maybe I was just too busy to see them. And now I was solely focused on this media and could see all these incredible possibilities, whether it's, you know, collaborations with people or great, you know, online opportunities, virtual galleries. My feeds were just, you know, littered with them. And so it felt promising, but it was such an interesting time, you know, those first few weeks, and I was just glued to it. And I had a hard time balancing that, you know, and just looking back, it felt a little paralyzing. And prior to the pandemic, I was working for several months on doing a new website and e-commerce site, and doing prints of my work. And so I was really online focused prior. And then when the pandemic happened, money that I had to pursue that has kind of, you know, in question. Printers that were going to do test samples for the eventual website, they shut down. So it's almost like that shifted gears for me. And I just was going down this rabbit hole of online world. And recently, like a pendulum, I've felt it start to swing this way. You know, I haven't checked stats in a few weeks. I've you know, I've pulled right away, and almost kind of now I'm diving into my art. And so the last 2 months, all the things I've been witnessing and artists I've been researching, as I was mentioning before, looking at different techniques, maybe looking back, I've been the sponge, you know, and now I'm pulling away from all this online connection and going almost super offline so that I can dive in. I've got this blank canvas in the background, as you can see, and it's sitting there because it's going to be my first attempt at, you know, trying to loosen up and let some paint spatter, which if you know me, that's, I'm highly tight and rendered. And so the more I can lose the clutter around me, the more confident I could be to try something new. But I think it's really been this pandemic that's brought me here. There's so many positives, you know, that are coming out of this, in addition to many losses and many harrowing experiences and financial strains. But just looking at my own personal experience, man, it's really brought me to a place where, you know, I'm shifting and I'm changing, and that's 20 years that hasn't happened. You know, I've grown in my technique and my craft, but I haven't shifted gears ever. And so I think this has created the opportunity. It's brought me here.
And Doug, how about you? Has it put how has it been balancing your online and offline life during the pandemic?
Yeah, well, it's been interesting. I think I share similar kind of response as my colleagues, where at first I was totally fascinated by it. It was like tons of drama. You know, the mid-March, because of, you know, working with the gallery at Open Space and other events that were planned, it was funny because I was like literally sending out invitations to events that are meant to happen mid-March one day, and then 2 days later kind of having to send the cancellation or postponement kind of notice. So early on, I was quite engaged in the process, and I was looking at stats every day. I was totally fascinated by it. Like I was, yeah, it was interesting. But it wasn't a creative time. I was kind of, yeah, feeling anxious and, you know, just watching all the things and, you know, everything closing down, kind of figuring out how to get groceries and all of that. And, you know, we have a good setup here, my partner and I. And so, yeah, it's like, okay, just settle in. But no, creatively, I was not into it. Even with some of my other work projects, it's like, okay, let's not react. Let's kind of just sit back, you know, do what we need to do, but kind of wait and spend a bit of time and see if we can think a bit more deeply about what's going on and not just pushing out content to kind of fill a void. Because I felt like that was part of what was making things anxious. You know, it was like people kind of reacting. And, you know, I think there was lots of stuff going on and there's lots of people, and you know, I was quite happy to see what people were coming up with. I didn't feel that I needed to do anything in that specific way, but, you know, colleagues were working on really great projects. And so kind of, I was in a position where I could watch and, you know, consult and talk with people about stuff. But no, personally, I was just not feeling it. But then similarly, a few weeks later, getting used to things, I did start, we've, you know, started growing some vegetables in the backyard. And because I'm spending all of my time in the backyard, I'm quite happy. But it gave me a chance to build some planter boxes and, you know, dive into that, see if we can make some stuff grow. So I've been doing that, and then a bit more, you know, working on my own kind of physical situation. And so just the day-to-day kind of being in residence like this has kind of let me be focused and really kind of shift from, you know, it's an opportunity to do things differently or to change things, because, you know, it's a nice break. And often, you know, when you're like, oh, how am I going to change this? You need kind of a prompt. So this has been a pretty good prompt. You know, it's one thing to talk about it with other people, and, you know, there's a lot of speculation as, will we go back to the same, or how do we create a new normal? So I'm really interested in that and working with my colleagues in that way. But for myself, again, I've done a lot of stuff online. At first I was a little bit like, oh, well, cool, everybody's into online now, and so it's so popular. And, you know, like I said, people have been working in these areas for a long time through technology. And I was teaching a class that we had to move things online. Fortunately, we'd already kind of practiced with some networked kind of projects. And so it was an easy transition, but it really did make me see, yeah, if we do everything online, it's not real, right? That's not what's really, I don't want to support that specifically, but yeah, kind of back and forth. At first I was it was hard to kind of get used to the working like this kind of format with colleagues. And yeah, as somebody mentioned, like that familiarity, you realize how much information we give off in person, you know, all the body systems and all kinds of stuff. Like I'm a hand waver and I feel like I'm kind of boxed in here, but yeah, it's really making me aware of that kind of stuff, which hopefully will translate into, you know, how things will kind of work in a hybrid way. I do like the online. I think there's a lot of opportunities for working in different ways, Google Docs and, you know, these types of gatherings where people can come from all over the world to hang out. Like I really am into that, but also, you know, it's important for us to feel and smell and, you know, use the rest of our sensibilities as artists and as audiences. So I think, yeah, it's a good time to reflect and to think critically about the opportunities, but what's really important to us. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Now I think we'll transition to a question and answer period for the audience. So I guess maybe if you have a question, maybe you can unmute yourself and ask it, or you can ask it in the chat, and I'll try to facilitate that as best I can. So does anyone have a question in the audience? I can just ask another question too, if no one has a question.
John, I actually have a question. I just
Sure.
don't want to take over from anyone.
Mhm.
I'm just curious what everybody's looking forward to as they come out of this. Like, how do you envision sort of your like surfacing up out of this or coming out the other end? What does that look like to you as an artist? We can start with anyone.
I'll start. The quick answer is I really don't know. I'm not entirely sure. You know, we're not through it yet, and I'm hoping that what I'll be being as an artist, I'm really hoping for looking forward to some new collaborations, artists I've met through this experience online, collaborative artworks, and of course this new technique that I'd like to explore, and virtual galleries and virtual presentations. And I'm really excited to participate in this new normal that is going to be happening and how that'll affect my work. But I also really don't know. I'm open to what's going to happen, but we'll have to see as we go along.
Thanks, Leah.
I have a question. I just was wondering if you three of you have any advice on or resources on, because we are kind of venturing into more of an online connection, because it's a new way for us to communicate, and how do you find, like, what are you changing in the way you communicate to make the communication that we have online deeper and more like, what are the challenges you find with the connections made online, and how are you dealing with those challenges to create deeper connections online?
I can contribute to that. I think, as with anything, it's kind of the familiarity and using it a lot. Like, we are working in Zoom, and it's just the whole phenomena of Zoom and these types of meetings, and being able to see everyone at once, I find, is a really, in the gallery view, or many people at once is helpful. But yeah, just using it a lot and testing things, trying it out and seeing what works and trying different platforms. I've done a lot of research into early telecommunications art projects, and quite often they were using multiple modes at one time: a fax machine, a phone, slow scan. So I think that kind of experimentation to me is interesting. You get to know pretty quickly what is translating and what's not. But if you're doing it in a kind of open and exploratory kind of way, then it's not mistakes. It's just, oh, okay, well, this works very well in this mode and that doesn't. I know with working, like when I mentioned the teaching on the class online, my experience is that if you've met in person, then you can kind of program a little bit of somebody and take that with you, so that when you do go online, you have all of that. You can hear their voice. You can kind of see them or feel them in your mind, and that really helps. That kind of combination of being in person and then working online. I have to say, just the phenomena of the telephone has not gone away. A lot of the times we think, oh, we got to Zoom and video chat and all of this is interesting. But really, if you just talk on the phone to somebody, like, you're connected and it's like there's been no interruption. But yeah, definitely the frequency. My mom's on the call here, and we're meeting once a week with my brothers, and just that kind of making the commitment to it and schedule it and just spending that time to see what happens. I think it's it's a benefit of this. It's bringing people together, and yeah, just trying things out. It's like a lot of these technologies are mediums that artists can use, right? And I think treating them like a medium and how you would experiment, and some things work for others, and yeah, that's that kind of approach, that kind of artistic practice approach, I think is a good way to do things.
So we have another question on Sasha MacArthur asks, my grandmother used to say art is a translator between the heart and the mind. How are you stepping up to contribute to this experience as translators? How are you translating your journey through loneliness, your grief, your anger, and your fear while going through this experience?
I'll jump in on this one because everybody else got to answer a question. Yeah, for me, obviously, dealing with grief is the biggest thing right now, and being apart from family, which is very difficult for me because I am somebody that likes to have my family always close. And I guess I'm still trying to figure that out. Like I said, I made these little houses because it reminds me of my grandpa's home. And it makes me be able to still connect with him. It's his birthday today. He's 83, I think. And, you know, I get to still call him. I'm going to go see him very soon. But making these little false fronts was something that made me happy and made me feel really connected with family. And I think your grandma's right. It is a translation of the heart and the mind during this time, because all I can think about is going home and visiting my grandpa and seeing him. And I think that's the biggest part for me. But how this whole pandemic is going to affect my work, I don't know. I know that I'm focusing on work that's for me and my family more so than for anyone else. So I have a feeling I'm going to be focusing on making work for family members, like I did for this piece. That's actually the YVR piece, Cynthia. This is for the youth emerging artist scholarship that I got. And that won't be in Vancouver anymore either. So, you know, all those kind of things of thinking about as a beater, as a sewer, I have the obligation to clothe my family. And a big part of that, a lot of family members don't have regalia yet. And I just keep thinking about those individuals and maybe taking the time to actually make them pieces that they can have now, seeing that I have all the time in the world. So that's kind of my answer to that question.
And Doug, do you want, are any more questions at all?
Yeah, I'd like to address possibly the previous question about, you know, how to make your connection deeper, and it might address this last question too, if I may. I've been adding more video to the process of painting, where in the past I would post a finished painting and like, hey, look what I've done or whatever, or it's halfway through and I'll post static photos. And now I'm kind of doing time-lapse photo videos where people are with me while I'm painting it. And it's been a really great response, and it really helps me because people get to see the process. It's almost like bringing them into this kind of quiet sanctuary studio. Mm-hmm. And that's been really great. And in terms of the transition from the heart to the mind, you know, I just did my very first self-portrait in 30 years. And that was, I think, a meditative process, you know, where I had no plans to do that. And I found myself laboring over this self-portrait, which was a really cool experience. But it was also, I think, the way I was dealing with my own heart and mind and spirit during this thing. So it's interesting as artists what we can use to deepen the connection to our own work and to the outside world.
John, I can answer Nicole's question in the chat or contribute to that.
Sure.
How do you feel that's, or what small brick and mortar galleries can do to help artists? I think it's a good question, and it's, you know, the Corona kind of situation, it really is set up, how do we do things publicly, right? Like we're all talking about what we're able to do as artists in our own spaces and having this time to kind of exercise and you know, explore different things. But I know through Open Space, what we kind of decided to do was we have, you know, a very nice gallery space, and we thought, well, why don't we invite artists to kind of do short residencies so that we have these resources. We're not going to necessarily invite people in physically so public facing or audience to see, but we thought artists could use that kind of space, and maybe they can scale up something they're doing, or, you know, use it in some way. So that's it. Those spaces are sitting empty, and given our, you know, the protocols around social distancing of 6 people or so, you know, you can get a couple of people in there, or yeah, so it's using, maybe spaces can be open for artists to use in different ways to document their work, stuff like that. Similarly with the Ministry of Casual Living, we've got a window gallery in downtown Victoria. So that's, you know, it's already pre-planned. It's perfect for this kind of thing that people can just walk by. But for our studio gallery, we've had to think a little bit differently about how we're going to program that. And I think it'll be the same. It's like we still want to, as artist run centers, we still want to center the artists and support their production and their work and negotiate how the public will see that. So yeah, it's giving the spaces over to artists to use as artists need. Now is a very good time for galleries to ask artists what they need, you know, whether it's financial or support in other ways. There's a lot of people, you know, administrators out there coming up with things and governments coming up with stuff, but we really do need to ask artists to hear it from them. because you never know, right, until you kind of ask, and we don't want to be assuming too much. So yeah, asking artists what they need, providing support and access to spaces that would otherwise be used for different things are two ways I think that galleries can help. Yeah.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay.
I just want to actually say to Teresa, on my calendar notice popped up today to say the scholarship event was coming up,
Yeah.
and which it won't be now.
No.
But also just wanted to mention like how wonderful it's been to hear from each artist, and each of you, we asked you and you right away said yes. So it felt like somehow this coming together was a very natural thing, and I really enjoyed that. So yeah, I'll leave the rest to you, John.
Yeah, well, just one more opportunity for questions. Okay, well, yeah, I'd like to thank everyone that came, and thank you to the artists, and thanks to the BC Arts Council for helping us out to put this on. And I hope everyone will be well out there. And
John, can I just ask, what do you guys have coming up? Is this part of a series?
yeah, well, this was kind of the test run, the trial one, and it seems like I feel like it went really well. I felt like I got a lot out of this, and so I think we will do another one. Our idea was to do monthly ones for the next few months. So so yeah, look out for another one that'll be coming up for sure.
And it's great to be able to see in each other's studios and to see what people are working on. So thank you for sharing, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you, John and Cynthia, for inviting me. This is really nice. I've met Doug before, but Leah, it was really nice to virtually meet you. I hope that our paths will cross someday.
Me too. Thank you.
Yes, nice to meet you.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I guess that's it. So thanks for spending time with us, and we'll see you again next time.
Happy social distancing.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye.